Hey, welcome to PEP 320 Assessment in Physical Education. This is a second video lecture in the video lecture series for Chapter 1, The Need for Change. I'm Dr. Chad Kish. I'll be taking you through your video lecture today. Thanks for coming. Let's get started. First of all, pull this out of the way here. When we're developing our goals for instruction, we discussed that last lecture. How your goals for instruction should be, the back end should be aligned back through your instruction for your assessment. So we'll talk about alignment through the rest of Chapter 1, and in Chapter 2 we'll really do some connection of those activities. What a program or process called backwards mapping or backwards design is where teachers, coaches, instructors, physical therapists plan for their activities or instruction by looking at what they ultimately intend to accomplish at the end and then determine the best path for getting there. So think of backward mapping just as mapping. If you're leaving Jefferson City, Missouri and Lincoln University to go back home, wherever that may be, we'll use Memphis as an example, you will take Memphis and we're going to look at how do we get to Memphis from Jefferson City. So your end goal is Memphis, so you're going to obviously want to start driving either south or east depending on which way you want to go. Do you want to go over through St. Louis and down Interstate 55, or do you want to avoid the St. Louis traffic depending on your time and go south and then cut across through the tip of Arkansas and southern Missouri to hit Interstate 55? So in backward mapping or backward design, you look at the end goal and then you come back and find different checkpoints along the way that are important to build that pathway to get there. All right. So when we do this as a teacher, we look at the end goal of a course or a unit. We might even look at just the end goal of a lesson if we're planning on using backward mapping for the lesson today, and use that as our destination point, and then figure out how we're going to get there. Is it a long enough end goal that we need to make several stops? If we're using our driving to Memphis from Jefferson City as an example, are we going to have to take a lunch break, several bathroom breaks? Is it a longer trip, or is it just a short trip where we don't make any stops? We go somewhere and we get there. So consider that a long trip could be a unit, a short trip could be a lesson. All right. So we need to develop our assessments as checkpoints to determine if we're going to meet the end goal. So if we have to get to Memphis by 7 p.m. to watch our little brother's basketball game, and we know when we leave, are we going to meet that end goal of getting there by 7 p.m.? We're going to have to check our time along the way. Do we have time to stop and get ribs in Cape Girardeau, Missouri? Or do we have to just hustle up and stop and eat at a gas station and get to Memphis? So that's your assessments along the way. You look at your data, you look at your statistics, and then you reassess and determine how to get to your end goal. So that is the concept of backward mapping or backward design. Look at your end goal and then work your way backwards to design how you're going to get there. So we're going to do an activity, and I want you to do this right now in your journal. All right, you're going to fill out this journal activity. You're going to write it down. You can type it up if you want. It's not something you're going to turn into Canvas for the moment, but you need to bring this to class next time in your portfolio because we're going to discuss this Journal 3 backwards mapping activity. All right, so choose an activity, any activity. So look at this. If you're a PE teacher, list a classroom unit. Think of that as possibly a sport or fitness or health. So not just dribbling a basketball, but this is more like playing the sport of basketball. So choose a unit. All right. If you're a wellness major, look at your specific professional career and choose an activity. You might look at assessing a knee injury in a game or rehabilitating a knee injury. If you want to go into coaching, you might talk about preparing to play against a zone defense. All right, so choose an activity that could be related to a classroom unit. If you're a wellness major, you could also think of yourself as a college instructor teaching a unit on this and build it like a teacher. If you're teaching a athletic training course and you're discussing your unit is assessing and rehabilitating the knee injury. You could look at it that way too. So choose your activity for number one, and then go on to number two. What are your end goals? So this is where we're going to think about backward mapping. So in PE, if we pick basketball as our unit, what are our end goals? What are the skills we need students to do? Make a list of some skills. Do they need to dribble, pass, shoot, play defense, rebound? What are some of the different skills they need to do? If you're a wellness major, list the end goals of the activity. You might list the person needs to have a specific ROM on a test, or they need to be able to do these 4 things to get cleared to return to activity after rehabilitation of a knee. All right, so look at your end goals. How will you assess if those end goals are met? If you're a PE teacher, list 1 to 2 assessments for the sport or unit. In basketball, are we going to do a dribble through a set of cones in an amount of time, or be able to complete a shot form with good form on a checklist or rubric at 80%? Or are we going to assess the overall play in a basketball unit? It kind of depends on what level you're at, elementary to high school. Right? In wellness, list 1 to 2 assessments that you're going to use in the activity. What are the assessments you'll use? And then number 4, write this down for number 4. So think of this, make this well thought out. We're going to discuss this, so make sure you put this in your portfolio and bring it. If you don't, you're not going to get credit for your portfolio for the day. What are the activities you would do? So in PE, if you chose your basketball, what different skills would you teach along the way? All right, so list all the different skills you might teach. In wellness, if you're doing a career or professional related activity, what would you do in your program? If you're rehabilitating a knee, what would be a bunch of the exercises you would do to help rehabilitate the knee? So remember, print this out, put it in your portfolio, bring it to class for discussion. There is not a Canvas portal for this activity. If you have any questions, give me an email. But you can either think of yourself as a PE teacher, if you're a PE major. If you're a wellness major, you can think of yourself as teaching a college or graduate class related to your career, but so that way you're still building classroom units. Or you could just list a specific professional career or activity, as long as you're able to do something like this, like rehabilitating an injury, where you can fill in all 4 of those answers. All right. So hopefully you did that activity while we were talking about it. So another thing that's important is linking assessments to instruction. All right? There's no reason to assess or to test just to test. You should make assessments where they really test your participants' skills and abilities to ensure they met your standards or criteria, or to help you provide them feedback to allow for improvement along the way. So one thing we can do, because we use observation a lot in the physical education setting, is use gameplay. It allows students to use the skills and apply cognitive knowledge or information, such as tactics and strategies, learned in class, and increase the levels of competence, which means as they go on, it's like the whole idea of you practice first. As you practice and use the skills, you're going to get better at doing them. And then your assessment should be observing to help students improve until you get to your final or cumulative assessment at the end of the unit. This allows teachers to assess gameplay skills and do what's called coaching. Students are going to think of, while you're observing and providing them feedback, as coaching, not as assessment. People get a little nervous around the word assessment. Right? So you'll actually be observing, assessing, providing feedback, but your students are going to look at this as coaching or teaching. All right? So down last one here, some examples of components to assess during gameplay are knowledge of rules, use of strategy, effective teamwork, remember NASB standard number 4, and the execution of those psychomotor skills, or those motor skills. So if you think about that, this example right here, if you're going to assess gameplay, you might assess NASB standard number 1, a skill, the use of rules and strategies, NASB standard number 2. If you ask people to take their heart rate when they come out of the game or stop the activity, that could be NASB standard number 3. We could look at teamwork and ethics for NASB standard number 4. And then at the end, you could ask students how they felt about it to really see if they're going to value this activity and relate it to NASB standard number 5. Remember, gameplay is not just about results. It's about assessing the big picture and making sure students using checklists to see if students can do a variety of different things. So here's a higher level thinking skills. So when we start talking about real world applications and assessing students' cognitive abilities, remember the different domains, the cognitive, the psychomotor, and the affective. When we start talking about cognitive, which is thinking, we want to look at some higher level thinking skills. So when we use standard-based instruction, we can check for higher order thinking skills. I ask for these in the college level because we're not just in grade 13 or 14. You're obtaining a college education and looking for a degree and possibly a certificate. So what are some things you need to do as a college level student or as a professional? You need to have these certain skills. You need to be able to analyze, to provide an analysis. That means you can read something, you can understand it, all right? You can summarize it. I can watch a video and analyze if somebody's able to shoot the basketball correctly or look at their swing pattern to see what phase of the swing's wrong. I'm able to observe and provide some kind of education-based or experienced correct analysis of the situation. That's analyze, analysis. Another higher order thinking skills is synthesis. What is synthesis? That means I can read through information, and it might be through various sources, different reports, and then pull that information together to make a decision. So I might have 4 different people that are bringing me a budget request, and I have to read through all of it to determine what gets approved and what doesn't. All right? And evaluation is the last one here. How do I evaluate things? You're pulling in your analysis and synthesis skills to make an educated decision based on some historical perspectives, some laws, and then just comparing information. So you're able to make an evaluation. So if we look at this, this is Bloom's taxonomy, and it has all the different levels. If you're an education major, you should make sure we understand that. There's knowledge, there's comprehension. Can we apply things? We talk about doing application activities. The next level up is analysis. All right, can we analyze, synthesis, and then evaluation is the top of the tree here. All right. Another thing you might hear is DOK levels, depth of knowledge. So another thing that's important in assessments is understanding some basic common tests that might be used in physical education or different courses. All right. So there's 3 kind of big broad categories. There's your written test, right? That may be multiple choice, fill in the blank, essay, something you do on pencil and paper. There are fitness tests. These may be one-shots or they may do it multiple times to see about improvement, but they are tests that might test your heart rate or your flexibility or fitness levels in different areas such as muscular strength. And then the last one here is skills test. Skills test. That is where you're assessing somebody's ability to do something. You're observing them do an activity and then using some kind of assessment practice such as a rubric or a checklist to determine their level of abilities within that skill. So a written test, what do? They measure basic knowledge of rules and definitions, right? You may be asked something to define something, to choose for a multiple choice or a true and false. The questions typically evaluate students' basic recall information of knowledge, terms, and information. This is really the first level. You do have to have background knowledge to be able to do anything. So you have to learn some of those things and commit them to knowledge. So you do need to learn that terms and information. These are usually done first to in quizzes, activities, homework, might be a test just to get knowledge before you get into the application process. They could be performance-based assessments, but really performance-based assessments are going to complement written tests, so you can verify that even though they know the information, they're still able to do it. All right. So remember, performance-based assessments are going to be more on the application side. The next one is fitness test. They test the level of fitness or performance of a general motor activity. You might require students to create an improvement plan based on their baseline results or their initial results of these personal fitness tests, and then even design a way to improve their fitness levels. And then you'll retest later on to check for improvement. Fitness tests can be used in planning future lessons. I used the fitnessgram when I was a PE teacher, and students that had low levels in certain areas, we would take blocks of time throughout our day and let them do different activities to try to work on their areas of deficiency. Fitness tests are good to complement performance-based assessments because some kids can really get competitive and enjoy this. Plus, we can really monitor NASB standard number 3, the knowledge of fitness, health, and wellness. And this is really good for the long term of students if they can understand their fitness levels and understand how to assess and track them personally. The last of the common tests here is the skills test. They're useful in documenting performance of discrete skills. You would use a skills test to test for like one skill within a sport. You might test the dribbling of a soccer ball, and you might do that in around a set of cones or an obstacle course and keep the amount of time, and you might actually take points off if they don't do the skill correctly, right foot, left foot, or if the ball gets out of their area. Students are generally given a criteria, and they can practice to show improvement over time. You would start, if you're going to use the dribbling around cones with the soccer ball, with students dribbling a soccer ball, handling the soccer ball, passing it to a teammate, trapping, right? And then you'll have them dribble around some different obstacle courses. And then really the best way to do it is to allow them to practice the specific test they're going to do as their assessment. Teachers should use a mastery approach and allow students several opportunities to pass the cut score. And once they pass, they don't have to go back and do it. If they fail at a later time, they still receive the passing score. So that's a mastery approach. Give students a basic level of success they need to get to and allow students to try to approach that and pass it. And once they've passed, they've met the requirement. You can also use gameplay assessments to evaluate different skills. Now, the evaluator or assessor needs to have some experience and skills in doing this, because if you're watching a gameplay and you're trying to document somebody's ability to do certain skills, there's a lot of different things going on. So you have to be able to focus in on that. So it usually takes somebody that's a little more advanced to use gameplay assessments to integrate skill test into gameplay. So another thing we need to understand before we move on is when we assess, the goal would be, as you're getting to higher level learning, especially in high school and college, and maybe even the late middle school era, is to use real world connections the best you can in developing your assessments. So here's some brief examples of some real world connections. And we'll go a lot deeper into detail and have some discussion on this when we meet in class. But if you wanted to figure out if students could understand tactics and strategies, a great way to do that would be have somebody create a playbook or a video playbook. If they say, hey, bring me 2 plays you would run against a zone defense. So that might be an assignment into building the playbook. You might have them, if you're doing a sport education model that we discussed some models, you might have them coach a game where they would actually coach a team. This could show they could understand strategies, communications, they value the game. Another thing, how do you know if somebody knows the rules? A basic way is taking a rules test. Another way is showing them a video and having them write down some rules that were broken that the official missed, or showing them a play and having them come up with what the correct call would be. After you do that, officiating a game is a great real-world experience that is culminating. So when we go back to real-world connections, here's maybe a definition. I didn't provide you with that. If you could provide an example of what a professional would do in the field as the activity, what would it be? And that's how you bring this book knowledge into application knowledge into what a professional would do. That's the real world connection. All right. So what else could you do? You could keep score or statistics. If you understand what an assist is, what an assist isn't, what a shot is when you don't count something as a shot, what the yards for the play are, what the YAC is that the yard after catch or yards after contact? If you can understand all that, you have a deeper understanding of the game. Could you develop a scouting report? Could you watch an opponent and say what each player is good at and how would we beat this team if we were playing them and what do we need to work on to stop them? If you can do that correctly, you definitely understand strategies and tactics. You could have somebody watch a game on TV or watch even a game of your own school and write an article, but not just discuss how the game was. Make sure there was some discussion about game strategy, what the coaches and players did to overcome a hurdle, or when the game changed, what was used. All right. And then another great way to provide a real world connection is to have somebody understand an idea and then either teach it or present it to a class. That could be a video presentation, a class presentation. It might even be a document presentation, such as if you're making up a flyer or something to present like a camp. All right. So there are some examples of real world connections and what they are to give you a little bit of background before we give you your assignment. All right. So here is your assignment for this section of Chapter 1. And this assignment is called tests. So what you're going to do is list a sport or activity. This could be a community-based activity, a athletic event, a traditional sport. So everybody, whether you're a PE or a wellness major, pick a sport or activity and put that down as your number 1. Your number 2 is list and explain a written test that you could use to test basic knowledge about that sport or activity. Number 3 would be list and explain a specific skills test you could use for that sport or activity. And then number 4 is list and explain a performance-based test, something with a real-world application, just to see if you understand what that means. All right. So what I want you to do, list your sport or activity. That's pretty simple. That can be a part of a sentence, just a statement. And then number 2, you would explain a written test. I would provide a 10-question, multiple choice, true, false, and short answer test on the rules of what your number 1 is. All right. So don't use my exact example. A skills test. We talked about this earlier. If you're doing soccer, we could dribble around a set of cones in a certain amount of time. That could be your skills test. All right. List and explain a performance-based test with a real-world application. If you go to the slide before, you could use real-world applications right there, and I explained a variety of them. Please ensure your answers provide detailed information. There should be at least a sentence or 2 describing 2, 3, or 4. You might even provide what instrument measures you would use. All right, 10 questions, 8 of them are multiple choice, 1's true and false, 1 short answer. All right, your responses need to kind of tie to the material we discussed in class. I just went over all these types of tests, and I even covered the real-world applications. All right, and for each one, make sure you list an assessment that fits your category. All right, don't give me a dribbling a soccer ball if your sport or activity was basketball. All right, so make sure they effectively assess your specific sport or activity. All right, let me pull this up to here. This is what it looks like here on Canvas, the assignment test. Please ensure your answers provide detailed information, at least a sentence describing the test and what the instrument would measure. Your responses need to tie to the material covered in class, and then here's your 1 through 4. All right, so it's worth 10 points. Make sure you turn that in by the deadline. All right, so here's our to-do list for this segment. of Chapter 1. Complete the assignment test that I just went over. It's due on Canvas. You can see your deadlines listed on the on Canvas. I put them out as announcements. Complete your journal number 3 that we discussed, backwards mapping. Make sure you have it written out and prepared to discuss, and that should be placed in your portfolio because we will discuss that next time in class. So what are we going to do next time in class? We're going to tie everything together. We're going to have some cumulative assignment that I'm going to give you and explain. We're going to have some discussion over the last 2 video lectures. We're going to discuss both of your printed journal activities I ask you to bring and put in your portfolio. And we will finish up with our first lab. We will do a flexibility lab, just where we'll do that in the classroom. We won't have, that'll be the shoulder stretch, so we won't have to leave or do a bunch of running or jumping around or anything. All right, so make sure if you haven't yet, you've finished reading Chapter 1, you finished all of your assignments, you complete those journals that I ask you to and put them in your portfolio and read over them and be prepared for discussion, because we will have discussion in the I don't know, what he said is not acceptable junior level college discussion. We want to be able to analyze, synthesize, and evaluate. So here's our Module 2 activities. Make sure you've read Chapter 1, The Need for Change. If you haven't by now, you're probably not going to read and you probably won't be very successful in class, but I want you to be successful. Make sure you've downloaded and read the NASB Standards document. Have that in your portfolio. This is the second of the video lecture series for Module 2. Hopefully you watch both video lectures. Complete your journal activity number 3, backward mapping, and keep that in your portfolio. And then in class next time, we will complete journal activity 4, real world connections, to get a little bit deeper understanding after our discussion. What are our assignments? We already did the first 2. The highlighted one, assignment test, I just went over. It's due here after this video lecture. We will do the flexibility lab, which is the shoulder stretch, in class next time. We will meet in class. Module 2 quiz is our Chapter 1 review. All right, so you will have a quiz. We had a quiz at the beginning, which was a reading quiz, and this will be a Chapter 1 review quiz that will cover both the reading and the lectures. And then we will have one more culminating activity that I'll explain next time in class, which is our backward mapping activity. All right, if you have any questions, make sure you send me an email. Be specific with your email, what class it's for, what assignment, or what topic, or what you're having trouble with, so I can try to give you the feedback you want in writing. If that doesn't work, we can set up a Zoom video conference. So I'm here to help you get through this process. Make sure you're doing all your activities and assignments on time. Make sure you come to Canvas on a weekly basis. On Monday, I put out an announcement that has everything that's due and the assignment deadlines for the week. And then I will try to put the whole module up at one time if we can. All right, I'll see you in class next time. Don't forget your information, and if you need me, I'm only a click away. Have a great day.